internally. Externally, okay, you might say, okay, for getting a particular grade, I will do it for this much time. But then internally, if you want to master in that particular field, you have to be internally motivated. And Bruno also talks about that reinforcement should be given at the correct time, not before and not after. Out here, he made a statement that reinforcement before this time may not be understood or remembered. You may give reinforcement before the student actually did something or the other, but he will never remember it. And at the same time, if you give after the student has done something or the other, it might be remembered, or maybe it's too late for a future choice. So you have to give reinforcements at the correct time. Like as soon as the activity or whatever you're doing with the students, as soon as he finishes, that's the time you give a reinforcement, not after an interval and not before that, because that might discourage, or even it may not be understood of why you're giving that reinforcement to the students also. So these 4 key elements help together to form a spiral curriculum. This is a statement made by Jerome Bruno. He says, we teach a subject not to produce little living librarians on that subject, but rather to get a student to think for himself, to consider matters, to take part in the process of knowledge getting, and knowledge is a process, not a product. And we talked about earlier, I think in the first class, that learning is also a process and not a product. We have to go through it our whole life. You can't just stop at one point and say, I'm done. It's throughout your life. It happens. The spiral curriculum is the same way. You start off with a basic knowledge and you revisit it every time. You go on and on and on, and it never ends. So it comes back to the same thing. Now, to get those 4 elements which we talked about, was readiness of the students, structure, sequence, and motives, Bruno introduced a spiral curriculum, in which the ideas are first presented in the form of language, which can then be grasped by the child, ideas that can be revisited later with greater precision and power until finally the student has achieved the reward of mastery. This is what I exactly said during the 4 stages or the 4 key themes of spiral curriculum. An example would be, I went through this myself. In statistics, if you're in college, like basic statistics, in order to solve a particular question, if you don't know it, you have to go through the things. The teacher himself has to go through the things that you're being taught maybe in grade 5 or grade 6 before. Maybe like the mean of a data set. He goes through that in order to teach standard deviation. I think all of you all know what standard deviation is. Or if I can pick up some other example if you want. An easy example. Okay, an easy example would be like in mathematics, to introduce, in order to teach something relating to algebra. In order to know algebra, first you need to know numbers, right? To know numbers, we know that we started learning numbers since grade 1, 2, 3, and it carries on throughout. We revisit it every time we start a new topic. What is numbers? Now, from numbers, we move on to algebra. That transition that takes place in that particular class is one whole round of spiral. It's a transition, you can say. You're introducing new knowledge, but you're revisiting the prior knowledge that you know, the basic knowledge that you know, and link it together to get a new category of things. Okay, one example I have here is you can get into groups of 2 or 3 if you want.